where we left off on the last show was Joe Biden saying that a ground invasion of Rafah was his red line, but not really, because he will back Israel no matter what. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu certainly got that message. Netanyahu vows to defy Biden's red line on Rafah. Politico reports Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he intends to press ahead with an invasion of the city of Rafah on the southern border of the Gaza Strip in defiance of United States President Joe Biden, who has warned such an offensive would be a, quote, red line. Amid signs of increasing frustration with Netanyahu, the U.S. president told MSNBC on Saturday that he opposed an escalation of the conflict into Rafah and that he could not accept 30,000 more Palestinians dead. Ramadan is underway, and there has been no ceasefire, by the way, folks. Relief organizations have warned that an attack on Rafah on the border with Egypt, now a refuge for about half of Gaza's 2.3 million population, would result in widespread civilian casualties. Germany's foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, said it would be a, quote, humanitarian catastrophe. When asked on Sunday whether Israeli forces would move into Rafah, Netanyahu replied, "We'll go there. We're not going to leave them. You know, I have a red line. You know what that red line is? That October 7th doesn't happen again. Never happens again." The prime minister was referring to the murderous Hamas raid that killed more than 1,160 people in Israel and triggered the war. Without naming them, Netanyahu claimed he had the tacit support of several Arab leaders for driving ahead with the onslaught against Hamas. They understand that and even agree with it quietly. Yeah, I'm sure. Quietly, they agree. Yeah, the Arab leaders want us to go in. He said in an interview with Axel Springer, Politico's parent company. They understand Hamas is part of the Iranian terror axis. Israel's prime minister also doubled down on his rejection of the possibility of a Palestinian state, a topic that pits Israel against most of the rest of the world. The positions that I espouse are supported by the overwhelming majority of Israelis who say to you after October 7th, we don't want to see a Palestinian state, he said. Netanyahu also directly addressed criticism from Biden, who has said the Israeli leader is, quote, hurting Israel more than helping Israel. Netanyahu hit back, saying while he didn't know exactly what the president meant, if Biden was saying he was contravening the wishes or interests of Israel, he was, quote, wrong on both counts. So, you know, we've talked about this in the past. Biden is in a political bind here, and Netanyahu is in a political bind in Israel. Because despite his insistence that the people are on his side, and on that question, they are on his side, and they actually support a Rafah invasion because they are convinced that...
According to, we got to follow up on this. Nick posted a poll, 75% of Israelis support going into Rafah, according to this poll.
Yeah, because now they are convinced that the only way they're going to get their hostages back ever is after a total victory, because they know that Netanyahu's not going to make a deal. But Netanyahu's refusal to make a deal for the hostages has not gone unnoticed, despite his chest pounding here that we read in the article. This is from Haaretz. This is just from 3 days ago. Thousands of Israelis protest government. Police use water cannons in Tel Aviv. 16 were arrested in demonstrations against Benjamin Netanyahu's government held around the Israel, including Haifa, Beersheba, Caesarea, I hope I'm getting those names right, and Tel Aviv, where protesters temporarily blocked Tel Aviv's Ayalon highway.
Only democracy in the Middle East, folks.
Only democracy in the Middle East, and those water cannons are no joke. Thousands of Israelis demanded early elections in anti-government protests across the country on Saturday. Among the speakers in Tel Aviv was Yahel Kurlander, who has been displaced from her home in the Galilee because of Hezbollah attacks. Quote, everyone knows that those who abandon the South won't rescue the North, she said, as she criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government. The hostages could have been my brothers and sisters. We, the people of the Galilee, were preparing for a similar scenario. Kurlander criticized Netanyahu, saying, I, who have been evacuated from my home, don't interest Netanyahu. The hostages don't interest him. The bereaved families don't interest him. She also went to say the starving Palestinians don't interest him as well, but I must have omitted that by accident. I apologize.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she said she said the starving Palestinians don't interest him. Only Bibi interests Bibi. That was the full quote. I thought I had that in there. I apologize. I must not have copied that the right way. But in a different town, some 1,000 people demonstrated in Caesarea near Netanyahu's private residence, calling for his removal from office. Among the speakers was Brigadier General Ofer Doron, who served as second in command of the Navy. In his speech, he addressed Netanyahu and said, quote, "You shaped the public service in your image and in the image of your stooges, weak, hesitant, running away from difficult decisions and conflicts. Your policy is entirely aimed at one thing, to stay in power at any cost, and the war serves that goal perfectly." Hundreds also gathered to demonstrate in Beersheba. Sigalet Hillel, whose son Ori, wow, that's a tough one, Chernichovsky, was murdered at the Nova Music Festival in Reim, spoke, "I am not a left-wing person and certainly not a privileged one," she said. "As a bereaved mother, I say my anguished and battered people yearn for true leadership that will chart the path and not burn everything down." Addressing Netanyahu, she added, "There are many culprits, but there is only one person who is responsible, and that is you." So all of that is to say that for all of his chest pounding, he is not popular there. He is not a popular figure there. And so you have two political leaders who feel like they are completely in a bind. Biden feels like he's at Netanyahu's mercy because he's not going to stand up to him in any meaningful way. But Netanyahu feels like he can only double and triple down because he himself is, in a very, very precarious spot vis-a-vis his own people. And while there is frustration in Israel that he is not open to taking any deal to get these hostages back, which is their top priority, he feels like he has to prolong the war in order to be the wartime leader that they won't get rid of. That's what it looks like to me. And it doesn't seem to be working as well as it usually does.
Well, because any Israeli with any sense can see that this is the end of Israel as a member of the family of nations, as it's often referred to.
And they also
if you
know
have
that
any
the more
sense, you
scorched
can
earth
see
is
you're never
Sorry, go ahead.
you're never coming back from that. I mean, more and more brands are being outed as Israeli or Israeli linked and boycotted. I mean, McDonald's. I won't go to a McDonald's now. A lot of people won't go to a McDonald's now.
Yep.
Enough that it's hurting their profits.
Their earnings
are
hurting, yeah.
Their earnings are down. Morton Salt, I believe, I just heard is also Israeli. I had no idea. Obviously, Sabra. This especially because all signs indicate Netanyahu is going to follow through.
Yes. And that's going to put the hostages in graver danger, too, from their point of view, right? That's what they're more worried about.
Of course, if they can't keep themselves alive, how are they going to keep these hostages alive? It's not even a question of them executing the hostages.
Right.
They'll be executed by Israel.
Right. What are you going to do? Exactly.
When the images of these starving women and children come out, I mean, it's bad enough already in terms of Israel's standing in the world. That's just it's over. They are going to be a pariah state, even if they stop tomorrow. After that, I don't even see how the Arab nations, who disgustingly are in the pockets of the West that have been bought off with our economic aid, I don't see how they even maintain their standing with their own people if they allow this to happen. I think it's going to destabilize the entire region ultimately.
Yes. Yeah, it will. And I think a growing number of people in Israel seem to be realizing that just out of self-interest and self-preservation, they need to get this under control. But their leader feels like his only play is to play the wartime leader and to play to that sense of nationalism. Well,
wasn't he on the verge of getting tried for crimes and corruption before all this happened? Oh,
yeah. There were massive protests in the summer of 2023 with his Supreme Court power play. I mean, this is the most right-wing government that they've ever had. And, the fact that Biden can't even play on that, right? He can't even use that as some kind of leverage. Like, hey, we can find a middle ground here for your own good. For your own good, you can find a middle ground, but he won't even go there. It's just a disgusting, horrible thing. You know, I mean, we're talking now in terms of like the political gamesmanship between these two leaders, and it's just so clear who holds all of the cards, even though he's politically unpopular in his home country. Like, he's not even popular in Israel, and he still holds all the cards over Biden. Yeah, it's a red line, but we're never going to cut off any funding.
Please clap.